topic that we have been talking about, we shall continue with the same discussion. This is part 5 and 6 of the topic, the Harappan Civilization, Local Origins. And so far, just to give you a sense of continuity, a kind of a recap to what we have discussed so far in other lectures, we began discussing about Mehergarh as a type site to understand the local origins of Harappan civilization, which is a Neolithic site, in fact the earliest Neolithic site that we encounter in the Indian subcontinent in the present day Pakistan. And from there we get almost continuous sequence of habitation well up to 3200 BCE, say around 1500 years prior to the emergence of the mature phase of Harappan civilization. But this discontinuity is not a hindrance so far as understanding Harappan civilization or understanding origin of Harappan civilization with reference to local factors, because by the time habitation at Mehergarh ends, so many other Neolithic cultures had mushroomed in this area that subsequently went on to become the part of mature Harappan civilization. And we have spoken about it. So there are quite a few pre-Harappan Neolithic cultures that we spoke of in our earlier interactions, and also quite a few early Harappan. So early Harappan Neolithic cultures would be those cultures that take us straight to the threshold, or to around, say, the period 2500 or 2600 BCE. So right down to the point from where we regard as the beginning of the mature phase of Harappan civilization. So what we discover is that quite a few elements of Harappan life, the mature Harappan life, are anticipated already in the early Harappan and pre-Harappan phases of Neolithic settlement in the same area. It holds true for the subsistence pattern, the basket of crops that were used as staple diet by the Harappans, the range of domesticated animals that were so critical to Harappan economy and lifestyle. They are all anticipated in the earlier Neolithic cultures in this area, and it is in reference to this that we also discussed that not everything, or not every segment, or not every element of mature Harappan life is anticipated or they prefigure in the earlier cultures, Neolithic cultures that we encounter in this area, be it pre-Harappan or early Harappan. So there are quite a few gaps as well, and that is the intent of this lecture, that there are quite a few gaps as well, gaps in the sense that what we get to see around 2600 BCE as beginning of the mature phase of Harappan civilization appears to be sudden and something that is not foreseen in the earlier period or earlier culture. So there are quite a few new elements also appearing around 2500, 2600 BCE, and in fact that is why we regard it as the beginning of the mature phase of Harappan civilization. The point is that historically all these characteristics that we identify mature Harappan civilization with are not anticipated in the local context of Neolithic cultures, be it early or pre-Harappan, that we encounter here in this area. But that's not everything about it, because quite a few core elements of Harappan life are very much almost cogently accounted for over several millennia of existence, of Neolithic existence in the same period, the same area. And that is what gives a lot of credence to the idea or proposition that Harappan civilization largely grew on account of factors that were local in character, that were local in nature, rather than coming from outside. Also true is the fact that these are processes, these are long-term processes, and there are several changes that might have happened in the world context as well. For example, the major arterial world trade routes could have undergone some kind of a change around 2500 BCE, and that could account for quite a few new entries that we get to see in this period as well, alongside the robust subsistence base and lifestyle and motifs and domesticated animals, crops that are grown, some pottery traditions that were already anticipated earlier. So they continue well into the mature phase of Harappan civilization, alongside entry of some new elements, say monumental buildings. I mean, if you look at the degree and scale of the monumental buildings or the organized roads crisscrossing each other at right angle and so forth, that's not something that we get to encounter in the Neolithic cultures preceding mature Harappan civilization. Nevertheless, the earlier notion that it all came from some impulsive influence from the West or from pre-existing Mesopotamian civilization or Egyptian civilizations and so forth, those arguments certainly are appearing to be rather outdated in the light of several new evidence that we get to have from pre-Harappan and early Harappan cultures, Neolithic cultures in this area. It is in this context only that the last interaction that I had with you, I was talking of the Sothi-Siswal culture, the Kot-Diji culture, that are regarded as the early Harappan Neolithic cultures in this area, and therefore, as you can see on your slide, the antecedent Sothi-Siswal and Kot-Diji complex are referred to as formative early Harappan period. And besides continuities, there are changes too in terms of the degree and scale of craft production. And when I say craft production, what you have to keep in mind, it's not as if craft activities are not seen in the earlier pre-Harappan or early Harappan cultures. They are seen. But emergence of craft production as a specialized activity. When we say specialized activity, what we mean here is that they are engaged in craft production all through the year, and it's not a seasonal kind of activity as usually you can see in villages of India even today. That when in the lean periods of farming cycle, some families take to making some artifacts, craft articles also, but that's not what we are talking of in terms of mature Harappan civilization. If you look at the attributes of the mature Harappan civilization, it's a full-fledged craft activity that we are talking of, and that scale and degree of craft production is something that is not anticipated in the earlier Neolithic cultures in this area. Similarly, the monuments, the number of it, the mammoth character of it, again is something that is not anticipated in the earlier cultures that exist in Harappan area. So it begs this question, how the establishment of technological foundations and intensified inter-regional interactions of the preceding period anticipate the phenomena of urbanism. because when we talk of mature Harappan civilization, what immediately comes to our mind is the urban phase of settlement. Now, urban phase of settlement is not something that we encounter in the early Harappan Neolithics, be it Kotdiji, be it Sothi Siswal, Amri, and so forth. This is typically mature Harappan phase that we are talking of. So how does it happen? Does it happen on account of slow incremental change that had been happening over several millennia in this part of the subcontinent, or there was some rupture in trade routes or whatever? So these are some of the areas where an obvious gap exists so far as our understanding of Harappan civilization is concerned, the origin of Harappan civilization is concerned. But one good entry point to understand this is to look at the technological foundations of mature Harappan civilization. Also, the already vigorous process of interregional interactions that are very evident in the early Harappan Neolithic cultures as well. In the earlier interaction, I have discussed that in quite a few Neolithic cultures of pre-Harappan and early Harappan Neolithics, we do get some semi-precious stones, some artifacts that are not local in character. So it must have been procured from outside, from a long distance, and there must have been some mechanism of interaction that would have facilitated this, because to think of institutionalized trade and developed market system and so forth is somewhat far-fetched in the context of Neolithic cultures. But that process was already there. This interregional interactions were already happening, and quite possible that it is as a cumulative consequence of the same interregional interactions that something dramatically different in scale and degree could be attained, and there is a possibility of something new happening around this period. What could be the source? What could be the direction? What could be the trajectory of that in terms of sourcing it is something that we don't know much about. But if you see the immediately preceding period, say of 3300 to 2600 BCE, which largely is the period of early Harappan Neolithic culture that we have been talking of, significant interactions on plains as well as distinct cultures, say like Kotdiji culture, the Amri culture, the Sothi Siswal culture. So these Neolithic, early Harappan Neolithic cultures are having their individuality, are having its individuality. At the same time, they are in touch with each other. There is some transactional thing happening amongst them. And by this time, all the portions of what subsequently went on to become the Greater Indus Valley, the iconic Harappan map as we understand it in our textbooks, you must have seen that. So that area, I mean the entire geography over the northwestern part of the Indian subcontinent, over which the mature Harappan civilization developed, that set of geography was already getting integrated with each other. These zones were coming into contact with each other. There was some transaction happening across these cultures which had specified geographies. And therefore, what we find is that the Potwar Plateau in north to Amri in south, this entire area is already settled. Here means that there are people practicing agriculture, living at a place in sedentary fashion for a long period of time, and it's not as if around 2600 BCE something came from extraterrestrial source and planted itself over this area. So already people are living in this area and they are doing agriculture, domesticating animals, they are using some motives, they are interacting with each other, which gives a semblance of some kind of homogeneity, cultural homogeneity to this area. And it is on account of homogeneity only that this vast area is understood to be part of a singular Harappan complex, right? So even in this period, the largest cluster of known sites was along the what is now dry Hakra River Valley. So if you, as all of you must be knowing, that if you look at the largest concentration of Harappan sites or settlements in terms of geography, then even in the post-mature phase, even in the later Harappan period, the maximum cluster of settlement would be found in what is known as the Hakra Valley, or it doesn't exist as a river anymore at present, but this is the area where maximum sites, Harappan sites or later Harappan sites or post-Harappan sites are to be found. And what we are saying here, that even in the period prior to 2500 BCE, that is in the early Harappan phase or early mature Harappan phase, we have largest cluster of sites along the same river that had perhaps gone dry during this period of time, that is Hakra Valley. And what does it say? That there is some bit of continuity in the settlement pattern as well. Distribution of sites is something that is not significantly altered with the coming of the mature phase. So that's a very potent argument to buttress the local origin argument. Cordilleran pottery had the widest distribution. It is found strewn over Saraikhola, Manda in Jammu and Kashmir area, Hakra Valley, down up to the Makran coast on the Arabian Sea. So it's a wide geography that we are talking of in the early mature phase, in the early Harappan period. So Cordilleran pottery, although has a nucleus area, but they are found in areas outside its nucleus. And what does it say? It indicates of some interaction happening across regions, and it is the integration of regions economically, socially, culturally, that accords uniformity of culture over a larger zone that we understand as one mature Harappan phase. So all these things are already in place, already in processual terms. They are getting integrated even in the pre-mature period. Similarly, by this time, that is early mature period, early Harappan period, the subsistence base of the Indus civilization also was well in place. For example, in all these cultures, be it Soti Siswal, Kodiji, and so forth, Amri and so forth, which are early Harappan cultures, we have evidence of wheat cultivation, barley cultivation, lentils are grown, peas, sesamum, linseed, dates and grapes. They all constitute the food basket of mature Harappan civilization, and they already are grown in this area in the early Harappan Neolithic phase. Similarly, in terms of domestication of animals, sheep and goat are so typical of Harappan animal domestication in the mature phase, and they are domesticated. We have evidence of domestication of sheep and goat even in the early Harappan Neolithic cultures. So, be it cattle, be it crops, the entire set of varieties are are already in place in the period prior to the mature phase of Harappan civilization. Similarly, sealed ploughed field has been found at Kalibangan with marks of cross furrows, which is indicative of growing of two crops in agrarian seasons, and therefore it is also indicative of intensive agriculture. Why we are talking of all these is because when we talk of mature Harappan period, we are talking of a large population, we are talking of an urban complex that requires very robust agricultural base to sustain it. We also know that by and large the Harappan area is not very rain or water surplus area, because it is largely semi-arid conditions that prevail in this zone, and yet it had the capacity to throw such wonderful towns and cities and trade networks and so forth. And that must have required intensive agriculture, because it was perhaps not rain-fed entirely. So there must have been some artificial ways and means by which people could irrigate their fields to leverage its cultivation capacity to an extent where they could sustain all these institutions in the urban phase, be it the state, be it some elite classes, be it trade, commerce, exchanges and so forth. All these people are not doing agriculture, but they are being sustained on account of massive agrarian production. And to have this degree of agricultural output in a semi-arid area, obviously technological interventions must have been made, and that is how historians look at this. If you look at the writings of Shirin Ratnagar, she analyzes metallurgy across the two periods, and she says that the analysis of metallurgy across the two periods, when she is mentioning across the two periods, what she has in mind is mature Harappan period and early Harappan period. So she says that one entry point to understand this transition from early Harappa to mature Harappa could be to analyze metallurgical operations during the two period, and that could bring new information to light. And she says that at the moment, if you look at it, although studies are minimal, but on the face of it, it seems that there is a contrast more than continuity that we get to see. So there is room for something new, some new intervention around 2500 BCE. We don't know the source and character and nature of this intervention. Nevertheless, there is some possibility of intervention here, something happening that we cannot account for in slow, incremental, gradual fashion across time in local context. So modest use of copper or bronze before the urban period in Mehergarh is seen. Most of the items that we get to see are bangles, rods, chisel and so forth. They were all cold hammered or cast in open molds, and we have little evidence of closed molds for copper usage, for copper metallurgical operations. There is no soldering in the early part, in the pre-Harappan period, but in the mature Harappan period we get to see all these. So these metallurgical operations are not accounted for in the local context. Nevertheless, copper was used in the pre-Harappan cultures as well. Similarly, a few fragments of gold, but probably no silver was used in this period, in the pre-Harappan period. So these are some of the things that we need to ponder about. In the next part of this lecture, the sequel to this, in part 6, we would be carrying on with this discussion without wasting much time on the preface of it, or to strike a chord of continuity, and we shall carry that forward. Thank you.